on that. So just we'll take final questions and try to address a couple of the key things that you mentioned earlier. So the whole question of the research side of things, I think you do need to be checking out what sort of thing is appropriate for the publication sort of in question. Looking at their guidelines, many magazines, for example, have very detailed submission deadlines that are very restrictive. And basically, I mean, we're talking the sort of Bellas here, or even specialist magazines like Wanderlust or so on, may have very specific requirements in terms of length or format, the package, the photographs, the type of piece, and so on. So, and it may be arrogant, and it probably is, but they will expect you to know that. And obviously will be a bit sneery if they're getting, like we said at the beginning, a sort of 5,000 handwritten travel piece sort of sent in, when that's not what they're looking for, and they do say it on the site. So I think you can save yourself a bit of legwork by, and this is true about rates as well, checking out what they say themselves. Do they publish submission guidelines? Do they mention their contribution rates? And take things from there. I think with small sort of publications, it's probably easier to try to phone, because at the end of the day, if they're too busy to speak, they're too busy to speak. But sometimes I've certainly had students who have been able to get hold of, say, editors of small publications who've been quite helpful in terms of passing on advice and so on. Sorry to ask again, Steinway, it says, Steinway's just asking about how far should you look. I don't think you can be expected to know the definitive answer to that. So, I mean, obviously, if you can, you're looking at the last couple of issues just to check that it's not something that they've just done. But in a magazine, for example, it might well be that a feature wouldn't be appropriate subject to cover again for at least a couple of years. So, where you realistically couldn't be expected to pick up a copy, every copy of the magazine for the past couple of years or more. So I think in those situations you do, as we've sort of said, sort of pitch the idea, just having made sure it's not in that particular issue, but you can never guarantee. I mean, of course, it might be sitting on the stocks for the next one, submitted by another writer. Nice. Thanks for the message, Jessica. I think a couple of people are getting worried about time-wise. Leash, we mentioned earlier, I think we answered that question about horses for courses. I'm afraid you said about pitching an idea or going straight in to sell a written piece. I think for new writers, it's sometimes easier to sell something you've got that you can show them straight away. I think once you've got to something of a reputation and they can trust you and they know what you can do, so that presumes that you've actually got that sort of mutual respect and relationship going. At that stage, you're in a much stronger position to say to them, look, would you be interested in this? This is what I'm planning to do. And they'll give you a yes or no on the spot. But then that's because they know that they can rely on the quality of what you're producing, which I think otherwise they just aren't in a position to do. So I think just to sort of wrap up really in general things, I know it's frustrating that often there is not a definitive easy answer to this, but I think certainly from past experience, the missing link is often, when you're looking at, and I'm sure some of you who are existing students will have found this in feedback from your the missing link is just that the idea isn't particularly strong, or the angle isn't particularly sort of topical, or that it just doesn't take into account the actual sort of potential outlet for that the person's sort of trying to sell to. And I was just before we came in, I was sort of I was flicking through some sort of feedback from past students who'd been on different courses, and trying to think about the different outlets and the opportunities that have come up, because sometimes looking at those cases sort of highlighted what the opportunities were, so although this might not be a model for you, it certainly perhaps just suggests a couple of thoughts that you might not have thought about. One option is obviously, wherever you are in the world, is looking at the English language publications in that area, and in many cases those are actually increasing now. And the same with online sources. So if it's we've got writers everywhere, from the sort of Jerusalem Post to the Pakistan Daily News to those who are working on specialist sort of bilingual and translation sites. To those who are working on papers like the Riviera Times or the English language in Athens or in Cyprus or whatever. On play to your strengths. So obviously, if you've got knowledge on something like sport, look at the specialist sports websites and the magazines out there. Obviously, again, everything from sort of When Saturday Comes to, we've got people at UEFA.com, and there's a former student from an attendance student who's currently working in Korea on an IT website now, but he originally specialised in covering the K-League football on a proper paying basis here, which he then transferred to Korea to sort of follow up. We've had students in France, for example, writing on, obviously France is a country where there's a lot of interest from the UK in terms of, property development and everything, from sort of French Property News, Living France to France Magazine and so on, as well as local papers that are interested in sort of English language content, as I say, like the Riviera Times.